So my topic for discussion today is it feasible to replace fossil fuels with an alternate energy source? And this is talking about the world in general, not just the United States. So what exactly are fossil fuels? First off, fossil fuels are formed from plants and animals that lived hundreds of millions of years ago, and then they died and they were then buried under the Earth's surface, and their remains were then transformed into combustible materials, which we use for fuel for everyday things like cars, airplanes, heating and cooling your house, the way we make medicine. The list goes on for everyday things that we use these fossil fuels for. But the problem that we have with fossil fuels is that eventually these fossil fuels are going to run out, and some scientists predict that these fossil fuels could run out in 50 years. Some say 100 to 120. We will never know until it happens. So that's one main problem. Then another one is the side effects that are caused by these fossil fuels, which harm us the most as a human race. The burning of fossil fuels creates carbon dioxide, which is the number one greenhouse gas, which causes global warming. And global warming, the problem with global warming is the ice caps are going to melt in the Arctic and the Antarctic, which means the sea level is going to rise, which results in an effect on agriculture in general, fishing commercially and recreationally. And the list goes on for that. And not only that, but fossil fuels are affecting our everyday lives with air pollution. It affects our lungs. It affects the genetics of plants, which create our oxygen when we also eat those plants. So fossil fuels have a big effect on us as a human race. And now the alternate energy source. So this is an environmentally friendly replacement to fossil fuels, and which it's also something that we will essentially never run out of. But so the main renewable energy sources are wind, solar, which is sunlight, biomass, wave, and tidal energy. So right now, about 7% of the world's energy needs are fulfilled by renewable energy. So the other 93% are made of fossil fuels and nuclear energy, which is a lot. 7% is not much at all. And with the technology improving and the political topic of global warming becoming more prevalent, the alternate energy source percentage is only rising by the year, which is a good thing. But the main problem that we have with alternate energy sources is that it costs a lot of money to develop and research these energy sources. Another big problem is that they're vulnerable to weather and other climate changes. So, for example, if there's no wind, the windmills can't turn. If there's no sun, the solar panels can't collect sunlight. So that's one big problem. And the last big problem that we have is that we have yet to really find a way to make these forms of energy in large quantities, which, like I said, is the problem we have. 7% of the world's energy needs are fulfilled by renewable energy, which is not enough. And realistically, our consumption as a human race as a whole is only going up because our population is going up and technology is improving, but it's also coming out with new stuff which also rely on fossil fuels. So we either need to cut down as a human race, or we need to find a new source of energy altogether. So the question is it feasible to replace fossil fuels with an alternate energy? For now, my answer to this question is no. And the reason being is we as a country have a huge effect on the world. We're like the basically, like what I'm saying is we're the big brother. That other countries look up to us, and like Barack Obama said in an interview a couple months ago, he said, when other countries are in when other countries are in trouble, they look to us for help, which is true. And we just elected Donald Trump as our president, who, on the Republican side of things, they don't really focus on uh, global warming and the environment as much as the Democratic Party does. So I don't think Donald is going to be putting in as much money into the renewable energy sources that, let's say, like Barack Obama, he put in about, I think it was about $3 billion into the his Going Green campaign um, over his 2 terms as president, which had an effect on it, but not to the point where it was huge. It was a huge point. So the second reason I don't think uh, this is going to happen is because other countries aren't fully on board. Countries like China, for example, who is without a doubt the biggest producer of pollution out of any country, and they're not putting in nearly as much effort as other countries are to prevent emitting hazardous gases, CO2 and whatnot. Their president actually made a statement a couple months ago saying that their country will hit its peak of CO2 production around 2030. So that's in 14 years. And realistically, they need to hit their cap a lot sooner than that in order for us to have any hope. But then the third reason, like I said earlier, there's no wind, there's no sunshine, there's no running water. That means there's no energy. So we might need to find another source. So one quote that I found from his name's Walter Youngquist, who's the head of geology at the University of Oregon. He said, ethanol is a net energy loss. It takes 70% more energy to produce than it is obtained from the product itself. Other biomass resources show, at best, very low net energy recovery. The 2 most popularly suggested energy alternatives, wind and solar, suffer because they are undependable, intermittent sources of energy, and the end product is electricity. So like I said, they aren't reliable. If there's no sun, we don't get energy. We have no way to store large amounts of energy for use when the wind and sunshine are not with us. There's no battery pack even remotely in sight that would supply the energy needed to effectively power bulldozers, heavy agricultural equipment such as tractors, combines, or 18-wheelers hauling freight across the country. Can electricity be used to obtain hydrogen as a fuel from water? It can, but hydrogen is difficult to store and dangerous to handle. There's no energy system now visualized to replace kerosene jet fuel, which propels a Boeing 747 about 600 miles an hour nonstop on a 14-hour trip from New York to Cape Town, which is currently the longest flight. We continue to seek the holy grail of energy. So this quote, end quote. So this quote really kind of solidified my answer, and one of the reasons being is I actually looked into that professor, and he's actually he's very heavily liberal. So he's believes in renewable energy, he believes in global warming and all that, but he doesn't think that this can happen. So he needs to, like he said at the very end, he said, we continue to seek the holy grail of energy, which is true, and we need to do that as a human race. So in conclusion, like I said, I don't think it's feasible for us as a planet to completely replace fossil fuels with alternate energy before we eventually run out. And the only way that we can do that is if we come together as a whole and basically cut down and focus on what we need to do in order to maintain energy and contain fossil fuels, so we can, like I said, fly a Boeing 747 600 miles an hour nonstop from New York to Cape Town. So that is it for my oral presentation number 4. Thank you.